Are you wicked? I'm Charlie.
And I'm Cory.
And this week we are going to be doing a post-Oscars dissection of the soundtrack to Wicked, really Wicked Part 1, since we have a whole second part coming out, which that's crazy. They made this 2 damn whole movies, but once I saw it, it kind of made sense why they did. There's a lot going on here, so yeah.
It would have been I was going to say impossible, but it would have been a very, very huge undertaking to do the whole show in one movie, especially the way they did this one.
Yeah, they definitely managed to flesh the story out a bit more, which was a smart decision since the musical's based on a book, which is much darker than all of it. But there's a lot of plot points in there that we were able to use, which I think was a good thing. I'm glad they were able to do that. I think the changes they made worked for the most part. And yeah, well, we'll be discussing them in the context of these songs, I guess you could say. So,
yeah, man, I'm super interested, or I was super interested, but it was just I was curious how it was recorded, whether it was recorded during the actual filming of the movie, or if it was like most Broadway cast performances or cast albums where they actually get in the studio. It was cool to hear how they did this one.
yeah, the vocals were live when they filmed this. It was, which I thought was totally awesome that they did that.
Yeah, right. It's pretty amazing to think that on top of all your acting and being on your spots and dealing with CGI, I feel like they had to deal with CGI, throughout this, that they were still able to concentrate and get such a awesome product out. Three mic'd up. It was like a boom, one strapped on and another one. Just really, really neat process. I don't know if I'm being naive about this, but it just seems like I hadn't heard it done like that before.
No, typically, I mean, most movies you see, I do think it's a bit of a novelty for a film version of a musical for there to be live singing on the set.
Yeah.
I don't recall having heard of that before. And, well, there's a reason it's a novelty, especially a musical such as this one, where there's just a lot going on in the production and even stunts are being performed, and yet we're going to be singing live. That doesn't. I mean, you would think the point of the film is they want to make it more perfect, but instead they went for the rawness of that, which was an effective choice overall.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine doing Defying Gravity while you're actually doing all that? It's wild. It's wild for me to think. I wanted to touch on it before we got too far in.
Yeah, it is pretty wild. But for a bit of background on this film, so it is based on a Broadway musical which premiered on Broadway all the way in 2003 and still running to this day on Broadway. It tours regularly. It's one of the most successful musicals ever. Kind of surprising it's taken them this long to adapt it to film, actually, considering. And they first talked about adapting this to film all the way back in 2012. Wow. But it just kept getting delayed, and most recently it was delayed because of the pandemic. But they finally got this main crew together 2021. They got Universal Pictures and Mark Platt, original producers. John Chu was hired to direct, and Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande were cast. And this was notable in terms of Ariana Grande's casting because she took a hiatus from her music career to do this film.
Yeah. Yeah. And the metamorphosis that came, whether you like it or not, of her demeanor, of her sound, is pretty wild. I don't know if it was her first foray into musical theater at that level, even though we're talking movie here, but it seems like for me, all the beautiful tropes, it changing you a little bit, you finding castmates that you make lifelong friends with. It seems like she got all that throughout this, which I think is pretty cool. Maybe that's the theater geek in me there, but there's something to be said. I fantasized to think how cool their cast parties were, so to speak, for a film like this, because there's just something to be said when you're undertaking musicality on this level, how much it brings together members of the cast, whether they like it or not. So it's neat to see her go through that stuff through the media in a theater geek kind of way.
Yeah, she's living it out. She did perform in a Broadway musical called 13 when she was a teenager. That was even before she was on Nickelodeon.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and that was like a musical TV series, Victorious, but of course she was a natural to go into pop stardom and didn't even have the backing of Nickelodeon to do it.
Yeah.
She just had a major label behind her pretty quickly and went right into it. And it's been very successful for her, obviously, but this is in a way her returning to her roots, but now as a world famous artist, she's able to bring her name to elevate this and really make the movie bigger. She was the name for the film. There was, of course, some people saying, like, how can she be in this movie? And it's like, she's got the name and she does have the voice. You just gotta give her the chance, I guess. And I think it's been mostly unanimously praised that she ended up being the right choice for this.
Yeah, I did some listening to the original cast recording, or maybe not the original cast recording, but an earlier one, and they did a hell of that was me trying not to curse there. They did a hell of a job staying true, even and we'll talk about it, but when they tried to change some songs and make them more new age, she stood her ground, and that's good. It's really cool to see too.
Yeah, most definitely. And this all did take a while to get to this point, and of course, there was a bit of controversy on the set for the film, mostly because of the fact that Ariana Grande and Ethan Slater started dating and he was married. That was a whole thing, and we discussed that a bit when we talked about Eternal Sunshine, because that had a lot of her response to that backlash.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're still together. We'll see how that goes for them. I don't know how that's gonna go, but
love will find a way.
You could say that. But yes, and the press tour got a lot of talk just because we had two people such as Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande doing all these things together. And there was a lot of speculation. Are these people actually really good friends? They're saying that they are, so
we look like it to me.
They're
like it to me. I mean, that's where I was going on, like finding a friend for life through musical theater here. It looks like they are best buds, to say the least,
I hope so. I mean, then again, they are damn good actors.
That true.
Who
knows?
Because yeah, they both definitely have reputations as being divas.
Heard.
So
I can see that.
Yeah, but there was just a lot of talk all around. But the most entertaining controversy to me was the movie poster edit. Did you see that one?
Yeah, those are, if you're a first time listener, I usually don't buy that stuff. Like, come on, that's so silly to me, but everybody has their opinion when it comes down to that stuff, I guess.
Well, in this case, it was Cynthia Erivo who had an opinion. She was very offended, but then when you hear her sing and like hear her talk about this, like you can tell I do think she's very, very passionate about this, even if it might border on insufferable.
Yeah, I'm down, and I give her a pass on the passion of it. It just seems like she got caught up in the moment. I tried to be like, oh, the media is making too much out of it, but as it was going on and I was reading it, it was like, woo, all right, calm
Yeah.
down a little bit.
Yeah, like this is the most offensive thing I've ever seen. It's like, whoa, okay.
I don't know if I can agree with you. I can give you the pass for passion, but I don't
Yeah,
know if I
very
agree.
passionate. Indeed. But yeah, this film has been a massive critical and commercial success. 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, nominated for 10 Academy Awards. It ended up winning 2 for Best Costume Design and Best Production Design. Bit of a milestone. The costume design was the first time that award ever went to a black man at the Academy Awards in their 97 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So that is pretty awesome. So yes, congratulations to Paul Tazwell for that.
Yeah. Super awesome costumes. It brings me to a point that we'll touch on a bunch, or I'll try to, and that's how much homage was paid while making it their own, which I think is so important in this case on all levels. But just dabbling in the old with the new is really what this whole entire Wicked from the book on, really was about. There's such a connection. It could have easily been a flop, just almost end up like a fan fiction type of thing, but it's really rooted in this universe, and I love that. And that showed through on those costumes. It showed through on a lot of things, and we'll talk about the musicality, but here with these costumes, it's neat to see him get his flowers for that.
Yeah, in terms of the music, this was nominated for Best Music Original Score. It did lose to The Brutalist, which I haven't seen, so doesn't sound like something I would enjoy. Sounds very long.
Yeah, not sure about that one either.
Yeah, and I do think Adrian Brody's a tool after his Oscar speech, but
I haven't seen it, but I've read everybody up in arms, so.
I mean, it was just
I'll have
rude to
check
say
it.
I'm going to keep going. Like, no, actually stop. Go sit down.
Oh, I did see that little part. I just didn't see the whole thing where he was like, yeah, this ain't my first rodeo. Stop the music. Stop the music. I did see that.
Yeah, that was uncalled for. I thought that was rude as fuck, actually. I was like, okay, yeah, this man's a tool.
Oh, man, I tell you.
So, yeah, that's my only opinion on that. And then both Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande were nominated. They did not win, but they'll probably be up again for the sequel. So, who knows, you know?
Yeah. So, did they shoot this whole entire thing in its entirety? Like, is it already set and done?
I believe
Or
so.
I thought that's what I read, and I couldn't find it this morning. But so they're all done the whole thing. We're just waiting for it to release.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure part 2's in post-production, which I would hope it is. It's gonna be out in November.
Yeah, you got to figure with that much star power, you got to worry about schedules, and blocking that out again would probably have been a nightmare. So kudos
Yeah,
to
and
them
they've
for
got to
getting it
do a
done.
lot of press for it, and the movie's been such a huge commercial success, 5th highest grossing film of 2024.
Yeah, that's cool to see too, being a Broadway adaptation. So
Yeah,
neat
I'm
to
having
see.
a hard time thinking of the last time one crossed over in the way that this one did.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I was going through trying to be like, all right, well, when, but I mean, Les Mis would probably be the only one that I could think of. Cats flopped,
Yeah.
but Les Mis, in my opinion, was a great crossover. I don't know how it was on the sales end of things, but I enjoyed it.
I mean, it was. I do recall it being pretty popular. I didn't watch it because that's just not my favorite musical.
Heard.
but it was a popular movie.
It's a good watch. It's a good watch. It's a lot like this one. For me, it wasn't unexpected that these actors and actresses could hang, but I think more so in Les Mis, the amount of actors and actresses I did not equate with Broadway at all or music at all were the reason, or was one of the reasons it blew me away. It's worth a watch. Yeah, of course it's Les Mis, so it's a long one, but it's worth a check.
Yeah, they did get a lot of people with Broadway cred in here, particularly for the singing parts. There are a couple of exceptions. We will discuss those. And we'll discuss how we, I guess, feel about the Oscars and whether or not these ladies were snubbed as we go forth. But with all this being said, the soundtrack itself has obviously been a huge success and getting a lot of streams for a musical movie. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, stream numbers are insane.
Yeah, and I can totally see why though. It's not often after I see a movie I want to go keep listening to the soundtrack, but this one I did. And that's part of why we're doing it today.
Yeah. Shout out to my family. They had to hear me singing Popular for the last week or so.
Oh,
Oh man, definitely a good one. Definitely
yes.
makes you feel like the like musical theater should. So they did well.
That they did, and with that being said, I'm ready to get started with this one.
Yeah, let's get at it.
So, the soundtrack begins with No One Mourns the Wicked, which is a reenactment of sorts of the death of the Wicked Witch of the West. We all know it from The Wizard of Oz. Of course, their version was Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead, which is iconic, of course.
Yeah.
But this time, they actually give a bit of backstory. That's what makes Wicked different. That's the point of it all. Like, why did the Wicked Witch become wicked? So we go back into how Elphaba, as we know her in the film, was born. Because are people born wicked, or do they have it thrust upon them? That's the real point of the movie. That's the question they're trying to ask its audience. And we see how Elphaba was conceived. That was definitely toned down because it looked to me like they were having an affair, but of course this is a PG movie, so they can't go too deep into that.
Yeah. We'll blame it on the green elixir.
Yup. And we see that this child was born green and has a sister, Nessa Rose, who is handicapped and in a wheelchair. And we see the story is told to us all. And I do think this is definitely a case where I think the song is much more effective with the visual. I do think something's lost a bit while listening to it all. But I do think the main highlight of this Ariana Grande is highlighted, and we do hear these new vocals from her, which I think we got a peek of on Eternal Sunshine, but just much clearer than ever before because despite her range, she has gotten a lot of flack for not enunciating well in the past, but this time you could hear everything very crisply, and she's a revelation during this song.
Yeah, it is quite the overture / background run here, and I'm with you. Her level is immediately apparent here, and I think that's a great use of an opening song. I'm a sucker for a good overture. We get a little bit here inside of the composition of just this song. We get touches of Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. We get touches of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, just slightly, in my opinion. We get all types of nods back and forth, and then we get spatterings of songs that we're going to hear. So this is, I mean, we're again musical theater, but this is how you do it. This is how you open it up. I'm with you though, and I'm glad you said it, and I'm glad we talk about it early on. Is there's a tad bit lost. And only because I say lost, not like it took me out of it. Like, I wonder what's going on right now where it's full scenes and only orchestra behind it, but more so just a tad almost just left to the imagination. And I guess that is a pitfall of recording, while you're doing the actual filming itself. But it's not too much. It's just a little bit, and I don't super fault it for it. But I'm glad you said it, and I'm with you there. But this is it's such a cool opener. It really is. You can see why this. Probably gonna say it's a bunch, but you can see why this orchestration, this composition, this musical has lasted the test of time so far.
Yeah, really sturdy construction on this.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, they didn't really have to make many changes because the bones of what they were working with were so strong to begin with. Thanks to Stephen Schwartz and his writing.
Yeah, for real.
Yes, but then we go into Dear Old Shiz, which starts with the real bombshell of the song, where Anazian asks, Glinda, is it true that you were her friend? And Glinda reveals yes, and has to backtrack a bit because she knows of Elphaba's reputation. But she has to say, like, I did know her, our paths crossed at school. And then we just get a chorale just about Shiz University. Shiz University, that's why this is Dear Old Shiz. And that moves us to take it back in the story where Elphaba and Glinda meet at Shiz University, back when they're in college. And that's an interesting story because Elphaba didn't even plan on going. She was just there to drop her sister off, but she had powers that needed to be harnessed and taught, so she started going there.
Yeah, this is such a neat little trope here, it reminds me of a bunch of different musicals, but you get that Shiz University choir who brings us right in, lets us know through the way that it's composed that this is a school fight song or alma mater song, and it's well done. Haven't been able to find if it's true, but my breakdown of this minute and 11 song, Shiz University, the alumni song, or the song that they do here, the choir, is such a genius breakdown and rework of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And we talk about subconscious listener. It's so cool that they poke and pop in little things like this to just let us know that we're in that universe. So I've gone back and listened to it so many times and really tried to get all the notes of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and they're there, and it's really, really well done. This is a cool little piece. Just a little tiny piece, but such a cool narrative aid here, and it's neat to have this as a track on the soundtrack as well.
Yeah, it's very important to the whole story, so I'm really glad it's here. But now, in this soundtrack, we are finally going to hear from Elphaba herself. It's played by Cynthia Erivo with the next track, which is The Wizard and I. This is also performed by Michelle Yeoh, who played Madame Morrible, one of the professors at Shiz in the movie, who takes a special interest in Elphaba. And this was one of the earliest critiques I heard about the movie was Michelle Yeoh can't really sing, which that's not an inaccurate statement. Her singing's not great. She did play the part of Madame Morrible well, but it doesn't affect the song too much because this is the only song she's in, and you don't hear her too much. She just starts it off to get into Elphaba, which is what this is about. This is known as the I Want song, where we hear Elphaba's motivation with The Wizard and I. She wants to go to the wizard because she's told that's a possibility, to make things better and to make her father and sister proud of her, because they've always looked at her differently because she's green and doesn't look like anyone else and is looked at as this monstrosity. But we hear she just wants to do good for the world with this song. And this one has a very bright arrangement, which I really appreciate. And of course, the vocals are out of this world. Cynthia Erivo's mind-blowing. And this may or may not be a hot tea take, but she outdid Idina Menzel for sure.
Yeah, I really enjoy her performance in this. I'm right with you. There's a tiny bit of me, and maybe this is my hot tea take, where, gosh darn, her singing voice, I would never think would come out of just looking at her. And it's wild, as she has such a presence musically, and really well done. And I'm with you. She knocked it out of the park on this one. She really did this, and it's this is a neat one, man. This is the backstory. This is our first real song where we get to see the early thought process of ultimately the Wicked Witch, and we get a little, she talks about doing great, and what it'll be like with her and the wizard together, and we get a little foreshadowing or a little touch of like, well, maybe he'll degreenify me too. Oh, well, that doesn't matter. But that really gives us this neat cross section of her thought process, especially at this point in the movie. So it's a neat one, and she belts this one out, and really keeps me looking, forward through the musical for more parts where she does this early on, and I dig it. I definitely dig it.
Absolutely. Just the vocals from her are otherworldly. It's you just have to hear it to believe it.
Yeah, that's real.
It's absolutely insane. But, of course, they are going to have to beat Glinda and Elphaba, and they end up having to room together. And that's where we get the next track. What is this feeling? And of course, they're so different from each other that they absolutely cannot stand each other. And they just have loathing, unadulterated loathing for each other. And this one went viral on TikTok, actually, which makes sense because it's such an expressive song and such an early moment for them, and a key point in this relationship, but it's just a lot of fun to listen to as well. And they both, it's so perfect in its Broadwayness, it's almost irritating, but I love listening to it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. But I love the perfectness of this because it lends itself so much to the narrative of the song. Like, we begin and they're both writing letters that are almost identical, and we still see some small differences and maybe like the outlying characteristics in this Venn diagram of these two characters. And then no matter how much the loathing is, musically they still end up sticking right next to each other, the same, which I think is such a genius way to compose this song, even though it is in there as far as like Broadway tropes. You say like it's a little bit too perfect sometimes. It's just so genius the way this is put together, like how much loathing they have for each other, but they end up being the same musically, and that foreshadows as we go forth with the story. It's really a cool piece.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. It's definitely an early highlight. I think we've gotten two major early highlights in a row here.
Yeah, man.
With this one. And, well, let's see if we can keep it going. We've now got Something Bad. The credited artist on this is actually Peter Dinklage, who voices the character of Dr. Dillamond, one of the animal professors at actually the only one. He was the last animal professor at Shiz. And he got a real hateful message because he's just one of the last standing, really. And this is when Elphaba learns that the animals are being treated poorly throughout Oz, and she's in there wanting to help, but this song is very on the nose. This whole plot point, it's such a very clear allegory for like racism or any kind of discrimination. Like you could apply it to racism, homophobia, anything you want to. It might be a bit too on the nose for me, and I wouldn't call this a musical highlight. I mean, Cynthia Erivo does her thing with it, of course, but it's a pretty short track. It's good exposition for the story and gives them a moment, and Peter Dinklage doesn't really sing it so much as speak it, which is fine. It's a short track. It doesn't take away from it, but it's definitely not one I go back to.
Yeah, it's a neat little piece here. I like where you're going, where you could put it with any kind of discrimination. For me, it sings to almost like the old school thought process phasing out without anybody realizing, and people saying like, there's still some awesome stuff with this being phased out. Why are we treating it so terribly and forgetting its ways? But it does its job. It gives a moment. Dinklage has such a distinct voice that it's impossible for me, not watching it, just listening, to not automatically know who he is. Like, I might not know who Cynthia was if gun to the head and no press and everything, but man, oh man, Dinklage's voice is so unique that there's no way around that. But in a neat little piece, and it does a perfect job as far as in the story. As far as being on the soundtrack, I guess it needed to be here because it was sang, but I don't know if it aids us too much in the soundtrack just listening to know the story. But it's a cool little one. Another little we get a few of these small palate cleansers, and I enjoy that.
That we do, and we definitely do need a palate cleanser before the next number, which is the longest one here. It's almost 10 minutes long. It's Dancing Through Life. This one is where we get to meet Prince Fiero, who's been kicked out of all kinds of schools, and he tells us, life's more painless for the brainless, which, accurate, must be nice. Can't relate, but must be nice. And we get an epic musical number in the film set in the school's library, and of course, he's played by Jonathan Bailey, so yeah, Fiero's pretty nice to look at. Let's just say very conventionally attractive. And of course, Glinda is all over him, but she gets a moment where she has to turn away the backwoodsman, who funnily enough is played by Ethan Slater, and puts him off with Nessa Rose, Elphaba's wheelchair-bound sister. And this song to me is so key in the understanding of the Glinda character, because she's so self-serving in all of her actions, but she sees herself as helping other people, even though she's really only trying to help herself. But she's just seen as good because of her demeanor. And that was a smart thing to do, I think, because I remember there is definitely an interpretation of The Wizard of Oz where you can determine, is Glinda really that good? Because, she really could have just gotten Dorothy out of there to begin with, but she didn't.
Heard. Another, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, another self-serving aspect of herself. Rather than getting Dorothy out of there, I'm going to see if she can't do some of my dirty work, so to speak, which is pretty wild. These undertones that we never would have thought of as young kids watching Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. No, I didn't ever hear anything of it until I saw the skit from Mad TV on YouTube, and it was an alternate ending of The Wizard of Oz where Dorothy just cussed Glinda out because she could have been home 3 seconds after she got there.
Heard that. Yeah. This piece though, this is such, even though it's the longest one on the soundtrack, there's some really, I'll use the word genius because I mean we're reviewing or dissecting a really perfectly curated, it's Broadway. It's done for a reason and it's done correctly. I love the musical transformation that we get through here, where where Bailey's doing his piece and talking about being kicked out, and we get more of a new age. We get a lot more of the full drum set here. We get these, I say rock and roll aspects, but more so just contemporary musical aspects that we go back and forth with the traditional here whenever we get back to Ariana throughout this piece, and it's really well done. And we get to explore all the characters in a jovial setting, so to speak, and get the message. The message of dancing through life. This is one I do go back to. This is a clean the kitchen, clean the house, maybe a mid-length car ride, but this is a neat one. This is one that I didn't really know at all from just my spattering of knowledge of the Wicked Broadway show, but it has really become one that I enjoy and go back to. So a neat one.
This was after I saw the movie in the theaters. This was one of the ones I immediately put in my Apple Music library because, like, I just loved that number so much, and I was shocked to see it was almost 10 minutes long. Because when seeing the movie, it didn't feel like it at all. It's like that went by too quickly. I wanted to stay in it because it was just so much fun to watch. But that energy comes through just in the recording of it as well. Like, I don't think this loses anything in translation, which is kind of shocking, actually, because it's such a fun visual number. You would think it could, but the music here is strong enough, and the characterizations are as well, that this is one I love going back to. This is one of my favorites here for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no contest. Yes, we'll be dancing through life throughout 2025 as much as we can. Wise words from Prince Fierro.
Yes.
But now we're on to one of the big ones. You didn't have to see the Wicked musical to know this song. And this is none other than Popular. And it's actually a bit of a full circle moment for Ariana Grande, because back on her first album, she had a tune called Popular Song that she did with Micah that interpolated this song. It was based on this song from the musical, and now here she is performing it. And this just shows off Galinda's superficiality. It's like, if we're gonna be friends, I have to give you a makeover, Alphaba, because that's her way of being nice. But man, Ariana, she did this song perfectly. It might be too perfect, but it works for this character and this song. And definitely a highlight of this one for sure. And I hope if Ariana Grande does return to the concert stage, I hope this is a go-to for her in the future, because it's infectious hearing her sing this song. It's like she was born to sing this one.
I'm so glad you went first on this one, because I don't know why, but I felt felt foolish saying that. I felt a little embarrassed saying it. There is this, I won't even say guilty pleasure. There's a pleasure that this song brings me that is deep rooted in my theater geekness and my love of Broadway musicals. This is that defining piece. Now, don't get me wrong, there's other pieces on here that are grand showcases, but in the original, cast, this is that song. This is the song that makes, I'll say makes the musical, but it just makes it feel Broadway. And the more I read, we talked a little bit about this before, but the more I read on this and how they were like, we'll do a little hip hop take on it in the movie, maybe because of popular song or because the composer had heard it, she stuck to her guns. And when you say almost too perfect, it's in the highest regard for me here, because this is, if you're a director and you're sitting there and she's doing this, for me, I have no notes, and it's very rare that I have no notes at all. It's just something about it, man. She was, I'm stealing your words, she was born to do this song, and whether she knows it or not, I think she does. It is such a stellar performance of this song, and for me, one of the reasons why this was so successful, this whole project. But yeah, I could go all day on popular. This is that jam, man. This is up there with like Everything's Coming Up Roses from Gypsy for me. Like, this is one of the defining songs, and I really love it.
Yeah, it is a defining song, and I mean, it's not a coincidence that it was first done by Kristen Chenoweth. That's somebody who's really crossed over. We'll
Yeah,
be talking about her more in a moment, but it's because of a song like this. I mean, this one did go beyond the musical. I went into this movie as blind as possible. I hadn't
me
seen
too.
the play, my parents did. I hadn't listened to the soundtrack, and once I knew the movie was coming, I thought I just want to go in and take it all in, and I'm glad that I did. Even though I was a high school theater kid, I did not know this musical. I was one of the few, but I just wanted to go in and take this in, and I'm so glad I waited so I could truly enjoy this for what it was, even though I had heard this song before, but
Yeah, there's so many places to go wrong as an art, just as an artist inside of this song. And I'm not even talking about taking it your own way. I'm talking about, it's very complex. It sounds simple, but there's so much syncopated rhythms. There's so many things that you could flub up here. This is not an easy song. It might sound like an easy song to do, but it's so technical, and mm, holding the curse words back, she killed it. She really did. She knocked this one out of the park.
yeah, definitely. And if you were a skeptic of Ariana, I think most people had to look at her differently after she did this one.
Yeah, yeah,
Because, yeah, say what you want about her, and I know her personal life can be very messy, but she was born to do this. For sure. Despite all this makeover, there's still things eating away at Elphaba, and we hear some of that in I'm Not That Girl, which is about how Elphaba is feeling about Prince Fiyero. And of course, Galinda is giving him all this attention, but Fiyero actually has some like for Elphaba and gives her attention, which is kind of shocking. It's just not what you'd expect, but he does, and especially since she is green, and this song is about how, like, I'm not that girl. Like, a guy like that's not going to go out with me. And you totally feel her. I think it's very easy in the movie because now there's people that are saying just my sexuality is Jonathan Bailey as Fiyero and Wicked because he's just so charming and conventionally attractive that it's hard not to get swept up in it. So you really do feel what she's doing here. But this is another facet of Cynthia Erivo's vocals. This is a much quieter song than The Wizard and I. This is not a full belt number. It's a much more tender one. And it's important that she's able to do that as well. And I'm glad that she did. So this is another really powerful number. It's not the most fun on the album, but it is important in terms of the story and showing where Elphaba is coming from. And once again, I think Cynthia knocked it out of the park.
yeah. Most definitely. This is that mid, I guess, second act. I don't even know, but like this is the real character builder here, and it's great that it's a demure song that she can really attack, and it's wild to see and sit there through the low self esteem of ultimately the Wicked Witch, and it's such a neat part of this story, and I'm so glad that it was done so right. There's If you're a longtime listener, usually by now we've tore apart a song, or we've talked about production and things like that. But we're doing Broadway here, and it's really hard to say anything bad to begin with. But there really isn't much to say bad, and it shows here on this beautiful, very delicately done take of this song. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful 4 minutes. Just like a lot of these, it feels like it goes by so quick, like you said, but such a neat moment, and really well done. Blown away by this cast.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's kind of crazy to me, even though I'm not going to tell you I've seen every Oscar nominee, but just based on this alone, it's hard to imagine like what could have outdone this in terms of best score, best sound, because this is so pristine. Like
Agreed.
you can't have nothing. I have nothing but respect for it in that term, and like we said, it's so perfect, it's almost irritating. But one thing I do want to say, actually, and this is I'm very glad they cast Cynthia Erivo in this part. And actually, it is because of the fact that she's a black woman. Because to me, it just seems like such an allegory for racism that Elphaba is green. And you're hearing that in a song like this. Like, you can very much apply that to something like interracial relationships. Because that's kind of what this is. And it's kind of mind blowing to me that I mean, I haven't seen every production of Wicked, but off the top of my head, I mean, I certainly know originally Elphaba was played by a white woman, and it's kind of crazy that she wasn't always played by a woman of color, just because it seems like such an on-the-nose allegory to me.
I really, and I'm not just saying this because we're sitting here. I really never thought of it like that. I thought of it more on a self-esteem level. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, yeah, she's being a different color, but I never even put it in there on the racial plight. It's another level of this, another reason to go back and listen to it another 10 times.
Yeah, like there's a lot of social commentary going on here, and if I have a criticism of it, I think some of it might be too overt, too on the nose, but it can also be interpreted a lot of different ways, which is part of why this film has stuck with me so much. You could say I've held space for it, I guess you could say.
I heard that.
But speaking of original Broadway cast, they are not unacknowledged. They appear in our next song, which is One Short Day, which is Glinda and Elphaba's introduction to the Emerald City. And I mean, they're just taking it all in, the pageantry of Oz. And it is somewhat reminiscent of, when Dorothy and her crew got to Oz,
Yep.
like, because it's just so overwhelming. And it's grandiose here as well. Like, you totally get it. And it is translated in this song. I am getting the spectacle of Oz here, which could have easily been lost in translation, but fortunately, it was not. And then we get the factual story of the wonderful Wizard of Oz with the Emerald City players. And the most prominent of these are Broadway's original Glinda and Elphaba, Kristen Chenoweth, and Idina Menzel. And that was a great Easter egg to put in here. And they've done so much since then that they've crossed over and become household names that they do fit in with the A-list names that are appearing in this film at this point in time, which isn't always the case with Broadway stars. But they've come that far in their careers, and it's a great little Easter egg, I will say that. Even though I did say earlier, I think Cynthia outdid Idina with Elphaba, it was still a very nice tip of the hat, and they both have great chemistry still after all these years, and are both funny and make the most of their appearance.
Yeah, it could have been this one could have been done super wrong. It could have felt like an obvious nod, but really over the top. In the movie sense, and it didn't. And it was neat because I'll go out on a limb and say 75 to 80% of your first time viewers out there have no idea that these are original Glinda and Alphaba, or Elphaba, I'm sorry. So it's wild to see and how they're incorporated in this Emerald City player. It's genius. It really is. I guess my only beef is there's not enough of a horse of a different color here for me, but that's just me, fantasy booking this one. It's a really cool, well done. One of my favorite parts of the film. There is that grandiose, like, oh my gosh, that you get walking in, and it's really encapsulated here in one short day.
That it is. Yeah, just the grandiosity of Oz. And then we finally meet the wizard, played by Jeff Goldblum. Perfect casting, by the way.
Yeah.
Actually, and this was another one I saw criticism of. Why was he cast? He can't sing. This isn't one of the vocal powerhouse tunes. This one is a sentimental man. So it's not needed, and it was perfect casting. Like, yeah, who better to display that pageantry than Jeff Goldblum?
Yeah.
I mean, so I have no complaint about this. And as for the number itself, we're hearing who the wizard is, and it is artificial. He is putting on a show, but it's an entertaining show, and it's one that I want to keep watching. And that's how he becomes the Wizard of Oz. But he's telling us he's a sentimental man, and he's still living up to the illusion that Elphaba has of him at this point in time.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't last for much longer. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, but casting Goldblum is genius. I'm with you. He's a quirky dude to begin with. He has roots in his own take on jazz piano and crooning, and such a unique voice that to even give him or give them any guff for casting him almost is silly to me, just because he doesn't need to. It's not like we're asking him to sing Popular or Defying Gravity. He's doing a sentimental man. His voice fits. Yeah, there's that long high note that he gets to, but that doesn't take me out. For me, it adds to the character of who he is, and it being that superficial story that he's telling. You can even see that in the musicality of it, where it's like, oh, I'm supposed to hit this note, and I sort of do. So I enjoy it. I love Jeff Goldblum, so it's always a good day when I see Jeff.
I mean, yeah, I'm with you on that one, and it is perfect for the character because, well, if you've seen The Wizard of Oz, the wizard's a bit of a phony.
Yeah.
Like, that's not actually a huge spoiler, I don't think.
Not at all.
Yeah. For sure. But now, Elphaba has been disillusioned and has caused a ruckus. And, however, she has a battle cry, and that is Defying Gravity, none other than it. We're finally at the song. You don't have to have been familiar with the musical to know this song. This was on Glee. It's just made its way out into the culture, and it is technically a duet. And we're seeing two different sides, and that's very powerful, because Glinda has decided to work within the system of Oz. Like, she knows it's not perfect, but Elphaba wants to go out of it because she's angry about how the animals have been treated and realize that it's the wizard's fault, and wants to break free from the system. And it's at this point that they're beginning to see her as wicked. And this song takes us through levels. They start off arguing, but then come together for a brief bit, but then they break away, and Elphaba goes away, and we hear her battle cry, and you have to hear it to believe it. I mean, I've seen the movie, it's like, oh, I'm just gonna keep going back to Dancing with Life. Then I heard this, it's like, no, actually, I can't get enough of this. This is amazing. And she did it live while flying. That's the
Yeah.
mind-blowing part of it to me. The vocals are actually perfect. But you still get the rawness of it from the live performance. This was just mind-blowing to me all around. Wow.
Yeah. There's I'm going to be repeating you, but it's such a powerful song. It's written so powerfully. It's done so well. I keep searching, and I could probably do a better job. You know what? Nope. I got it right here. It is the epitome for me, musical theater. This is how you end going into intermission, and it's such a powerful beast. I mean, this is almost worthy of a, not just in this performance, because this performance is amazing, but regardless, this is almost like you want to do a standing ovation at intermission, and that's how powerful this song is. And these girls crush it, man. They crush it. There's no, I won't say there's no way, I challenge anybody to listen to this and not feel something, because it's just a moving, sweeping, grandiose finish to this first half, and it's so spectacularly done. I'm just gonna keep saying that over and over again if I keep going, but really heck of a show, girls, heck of a show.
Yeah, and this is the moment where I think the almost annoying too perfectness of this strips away a bit to get to that genuine emotion beyond the pageantry, more so
Agreed.
in terms of what we're looking for just as music listeners, not as Broadway people, not seeing a show, but just in terms of I want that emotion from the song, in addition to mind-blowing vocals, and that's what I'm getting here. Like, this is, like, it's not just Broadway, we're also in, like, Whitney and Mariah land by getting to the heart of that with this rendition of Defying Gravity.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. I you know what, I'm just gonna say it. Schwartz is up there for me in this run with some Rodgers and Hammerstein-esque, just wild, beautiful, timeless a Broadway, and this cast has just knocked it out of the park. It really has so far. I can't wait to see what they have for the second half.
Neither can I. Already wanting it. November can't come. November will be my happy buff with part 2 of Cher's memoir and Wicked for Good coming out. I'll be
Man.
on cloud 9.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will.
So that's good. That's a good thing. We want to be on cloud 9. And we'll have to hope I'm happy. I will be. But wow, there we have it. Our first ever foray into Broadway. It was a bit different for us to do just because it's Broadway.
Yeah. Yeah, there really is. I mean, if you're a first time listener, welcome. But if you've been with us for a while, this was a little bit of a departure from our normal. We didn't really talk about pacing. We didn't really talk about concept, because we don't need to. These are things that are almost a given, if not a given, in the world of musical theater. So this was fun. This was fun. It was almost like it's almost like we had a safety net underneath us today, because it's just such a beautiful score, and we got to enjoy it together. So a neat one.
No, I hardly even wrote notes for this one because
Me too.
I felt comfortable enough to do it. But now we're at it. Let's see. Let's try and grade it as we can, if we do normally. What's your grade for this album?
I thought about how I was going to grade this, and I originally was going to grade it against the original cast recording. But that's not really, not that it's not fair. It's just, it takes away from what it is. This is a really awesome cast. They have whole they have 100% embodied this whole entire idea, this whole entire score, this whole entire premise, this whole entire timeless show. And for me, they've knocked it out of the park. I don't think there's any way I can't give this an A plus, but I have to do A plus with a bit of an asterisk because it's not on the same grading scale as like if we do an original album. It's just it's really 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 well done. I give it I was gonna be an A, but I have to give it the A plus because of the cast and the way they elevated it. This could have been a cookie cutter. Well, let's do Wicked. All right, boom, boom, boom. We'll cast whoever. I really think that this was painstakingly done down to the T, and inside of that they really elevated it for me. So maybe I'll catch some crap from theater buffs, and that's okay. I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments, but this one is all the way for me.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to grade it a bit differently than you because, like, in terms of, like, the movie itself, I think that's, like, amazing, epic. If I'm going to take it away from that, I do have to say there are a couple of nice little palette cleansers. They're not songs that I go back to.
Heard.
So, just in terms of an album, I do have to note that. And also the fact that, for the most part, I'm very impressed with how these songs translated just to audio. Because that's an issue I have with a lot of musical cast recordings, frankly, is I just don't think it always translates to a point where I want to go back to it without watching a live production or the film. Because that's usually the case for me. It's hard to take it out of it. I think they did that very, very well here. So I'm not going to go all the way with the A+, because there are a couple, just in terms of as an album moments, in terms of what we're looking for, there are a couple of things that are not up to my liking, but for what this is, I still have to give it an A.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
And the highs are very, very high. Like, the little palette cleansers, you kind of, I almost can't count them because the highs of this are so extraordinary, with Dancing Through Life, Popular, Defying Gravity, that alone.
Yeah, that's a thought that I didn't have, but it is so true. Is there are cast recordings I listen to and like, I would rather just sit down and watch the show. I feel like, maybe this is just a personal opinion, but like Jesus Christ Superstar is one for me I could listen to. I have listened to on vinyl over and over and over again and not had to worry about watching the show. So this one definitely is on that level for me of not having, I don't need to see the movie. I do have a little bit of want to see the movie when I listen to this, but it definitely holds its own.
Definitely. I mean, the number one for me I can listen to without anything is the Grease soundtrack, but that's a different animal, really, because they were trying to make a pop soundtrack and album, too.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't even think about Grease, but that's on that level, too.
It is, but it's also its own animal.
Yeah.
Because that was the point, kind of, to get a hit for Olivia Newton-John, too, and that's what they did.
Heard that.
So, yeah, of course it's its own thing. If you gotta pick a favorite song.
Popular. Popular. That's my jam piece.
I'm holding space for Defying Gravity.
Hold that space.
Yes, always. Love it. So epic. It's basic choice, but who cares? I don't care.
Heard that.
But yes, this was a bit of a departure for us. And we did want to do something with Oscar season. Cory, I'm curious, did you see many of the Oscar nominated films this year?
I want to say I did, but then looking at the list, no. I've been terrible with my movie going this year. Um, it's tough. It is tough. It's few and far between what I've seen this year.
Yeah, there wasn't a ton that I saw this year, and going into it, obviously on its own, so much respect for both Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, and individually, of course, Oscar worthy. And they did both lose, and there has been some discourse about that, of course. But we do have to consider a lot of people commenting probably haven't seen all the movies.
Heard.
So, yeah, it is interesting, though. Ariana Grande lost to Zoe Saldana, and on its own, obviously, very successful actress. No disrespect to her. I think she had the misfortune of being in a really controversial movie itself, Amelia Perez.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I haven't seen a lot because of the controversy surrounding it. I'm not sure I'd enjoy it. And that alone is controversial. So that's its own can of worms. But I know the Best Actress has definitely gotten some talk with it. Because Mikey Madison won for her role in Honora, which I haven't seen, so I'm not going to comment on her performance. As much as I love Cynthia Erivo in this, I was rooting for Demi Moore to win an Oscar, and it didn't happen, and I do feel a little sad for her.
Yeah, what's my best way to say this? Those girls were going up against almost an insurmountable odds. I feel like I hate to be like a naysayer on this, but I didn't think either of them were going to win. Not because of their performance. I just think that the nod was their win. For them to be nominated was their win. Just because I don't feel like the Broadway adaptation lends itself to the Oscars wanting to herald that as their best actress or supporting, where that it has its place in the Tonys kind of mentality. But it was a tough one. Not that I hope they didn't think they would win, but I hope it wasn't as much of a hit for either of them to not win. I think it was really a victory by being nominated.
Yeah, Ariana was very gracious she was a gracious loser. Cynthia Erivo definitely looked disappointed, as did Demi Moore.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's hard not to in that moment, because remember, this is show business, and to make it to that level, you do have to have an ego on you, but also they're just passionate about their craft, especially Cynthia Erivo.
Agreed.
So, like, if I were in those shoes, yeah, I would have been disappointed too. But if Cynthia is working on an original song for part 2, which is the case, I believe, then she has a very good chance to win an Oscar for that, and she will become the youngest EGOT ever.
Heard.
So I think that was part of the discourse, because that would have been cool to see Cynthia Erivo become the youngest EGOT ever, but it might just happen next year. And yeah, it is interesting to see how it now has its place at the Tonys, because if you look at Oscars of years past, old Hollywood, they had no problem giving an Oscar to Broadway adaptations.
Heard.
Because, like, West Side Story, Sound of Music, even Chicago, they got multiple awards.
That is true. I didn't even put that in there, but that is true.
So, yeah, I do think it's interesting how that's changed over the years. But that just is how it goes. And some people vote for complete bullshit, frankly. Like, there was a quote that leaked that said Cynthia Erivo is too old for Wicked. That was what a voter wrote. It's like, okay, if that's what we're basing this on.
Yeah, that's silly.
Yeah, that is very silly. So, But they do have, and really they also won by getting to perform the opening number at the Oscars and absolutely owning it with honoring The Wizard of Oz and Wiz Origins, with Ariana doing Over the Rainbow, Cynthia doing Home, both of them doing Defying Gravity. They did walk away winners with that.
Yeah, man, that's one that has eluded me. We talked about it off before we got on the podcast today, but that's one I gotta check out because that is pure genius. Oh, I can't wait to check that out. That's super cool idea.
Yeah, I'm really glad that they did that. And they touched so many with this movie in a way that not everybody can say that they did with the nominees.
Yeah, I mean, we're in 2024, and I'm not saying Broadway's dead or anywhere near that, but I'm saying we're in a different kind of mentality where I don't think it gets the flowers it should in a mainstream setting per se, and it's great to see. Even though in my old man on the porch, don't be singing in my theater kind of thing, it's neat to see it bringing whole theaters of people who want to sing along and things like that.
Yeah, it is. And I'm glad that we have that again.
Yeah, agreed. I'm with you.
Because it's been a while, and I'm glad that we're definitely going to get it again.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
soon enough.
Definitely looking forward to it.
That we are, but we're going to be back to usual business next week because guess what? There's a new Lady Gaga album, so of course we're going to be covering that.
Yeah, usual business is an understatement. We're going back at the Gaga. And you talked about going into seeing Wicked blind. I've gone out of my way not to hear Abracadabra. I'm 100% blind going in this. So I didn't even watch this week's Saturday Night Live because I didn't want to spoil per se anything. So Gaga, come on, girl. We're coming at you. Let's get this.
Oh yeah, we love Gaga and Taylor are the two we've done one of each year on this show. So of course we're going back to her.
Yeah, man.
But I'm really excited too because Lady Gaga's always a lot of fun to discuss, and this is an interesting era for her so far. So I'm really excited to get into it.
Yeah, man. I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yes, but of course, you know what to do. Follow us where you're listening, subscribe, leave us a nice rating and review, and we'll be back at it soon enough with Mayhem. We can't wait to bring that to you.
Peace!